So we are a little bit late, so I start by you get the seat. This reduced complexity many-core is architecture, and to understand it, you have to understand what this architecture is for. And it's for timing analysis, because timing analysis, you need it in real-time systems, so a static timing analysis where you compute a worst-case execution time for a program. So you need this in real-time systems, and it's a hard problem on single cores, but on many cores it's very hard. So there are a lot of initiatives and a lot of projects, even with the Horizon 2020. So how to calculate worst-case execution times on many cores. And what I present here is a different approach how we want to solve the problem. So what is the problem about this timing analysis, especially in many cores? These are the two main problems. There are a lot of more, but the main problems are the speculative components in a modern core. So the branch prediction, out-of-order execution, multi-level cores, everything works that it's optimized for the average case, but in the worst case there might be a very long delay. And for a WCT analysis you have to assume the worst case way. So this makes it very hard to get a tight worst case execution time, and you have a lot of overestimation. Even worse, in modern architecture, especially with out-of-order execution, and so you get some timing anomalies and special things, so that often there are special cases where you cannot execute it, so it cannot get a worst case execution time, so it's there is no upper bound, and that's so you cannot give for the whole. So if you have to avoid such special cases. And this is for the core, but if you have multi-cores, there's a very important additional problem. This is when you access the shared memory, you have interferences between these cores, and they can delay at the memory controller. And for the worst case, you have to assume that everybody accesses it at the same time, and you are the last one who gets served. And so if you do this big time for every memory access, you see you multiply your execution time with the number of cores in the worst case. So this is a really hard problem. And we did for 6 years 2 EU projects, and we didn't find a real solution for the problem. You can reduce it a little bit, but not really because of this shared memory problem. So here I illustrated how, and therefore I think the problem is the shared memory architecture. So here it's like some schematic how architecture looks like currently and how I want to modify it. So you have your memory, the cache hierarchy, then here's some control for branch control, and then multiple issues. And so to make it more predictable, I use smaller cores in order, without speculation, so no branch prediction, no out-of-order execution, simple in order core. Then I get rid of all the cache hierarchy. I have only local memory per core, but you see it's much simpler, but you cannot do any parallel computation with this because everything works for its own. So you need something to connect them, and therefore we use a network on chip to connect them, but in a different way. We have not, we don't use it just to connect it to the memory. We use the NOC to send messages from one core to another, not only to access memory. And still, no core can access the memory of the other one. He has to send a message, and maybe this message can be something so that the core sends back his memory, a memory load or something like that. But in principle, it's just you have only messages. And what then you can do, because this is so simple, this architecture, you can have a lot of cores. You have much more cores, and so this should be how we could provide some performance. Because with this simple in-order cores, they are very slow, but maybe for some applications we might have the performance if there is enough parallelism in an application. So it won't be the solution for every program, but we hope that for most of important ones. This is just, so we think that maybe we have, if we want to do I/O, or if we need a shared memory, we can put them and directly connect them to the cores, not over the NOC, but we can do some buses or some memory and connect them directly to the cores. But this is only a small thing, I won't tell more about that. So this is the architecture that we think of. So we have a small and simple in-order core, some local memory, very fast but separated and isolated. And all these cores have a network interface, and this network interface connects them via NOC to a big many core. And because we have much of them, we get some performance. So what are the advantages of this architecture? The cores are isolated, and you have an explicit communication. This allows you to analyze and to get a model what really happens, and to get a tight timing analysis. The cores itself are simple. That simplifies the WCRT analysis, or even enables the worst case execution time analysis for the cores. And another point is you don't waste energy for speculation. So maybe this could be an energy, this is so the midterm goal is to investigate how much energy is consumed. Can we save memory energy with it? So the key question is, can we find applications that work there? Can we find applications that work with it? Can we port it to this application? Okay, this application to this architecture, and how difficult is it? And when we have ported it, is the performance comparable to current distributed shared memory multi-cores, or are we slower than that? That's the question. And the other question is if it's slower, maybe the worst case execution time is better. So these are the three key questions we want to investigate. And now I go some slides on the details of the architecture. So we are only at the beginning and we have some ideas. So the important thing is the connections between the cores. There are already some architectures that have message passing multi-cores. The Intel SCC was one of this. Also the Calray and Parallela, the Epiphany architecture. There are also many cores, and they have some message passing between the cores, but they don't have explicit send and receive instructions. They just do it. You can write to the memory of another core, and you can receive a message via this interface. So if you want to send a message to another core, you write in his memory, and then this core reads from his memory, and to send it back, he writes in your memory, or the other way around. This is depends on what is more efficient. But you see, this is a real overhead, because you write to this memory access is translated to a message over the NOC, then you write into the memory, maybe you get some message back, and then you use this mechanism to send messages. So it's kind of double, and the idea is just to use it directly. And this is what I call pipeline integrated message passing. So you don't write have loads and stores to other memories, but you have special send and receive instructions to send messages to other cores. So we have explicit message passing. This looks like, so currently we need only 5 more instructions, and we implemented it in the RISC-V. So we have once again an implementation of the RISC-V, and we added these 5 instructions. So there's one, so these all are registers, so you just have the possibility to send to a core a message that is in a register. So if you have a 64-bit architecture, we can send 64-bit to another core. It is blocking, so if your send buffer is full, you just wait until it is empty. You have a receive buffer, you have a receive instruction. There you give the number of your core, where you want to receive this, and if there is some, then you get it it's written to your register what was this message that came from it. This is for blocking communication, but sometimes you don't want to block, you want to do something in this time. For that you need these other 3 instructions. So with probe you check if there is a message from a core, or if the send buffer is full, or with any you just get if there is any message from any core, and you get the number from the core where there is a message arrived. This is the interface to the NOC, to the network router, and the network itself is shown here. It's also much simpler than any other core, the typically network and chips core routers. We don't need take a mesh. It's a 2D torus, so we have, instead of a mesh, we also have this wraparound. But this saves us some logic, because we don't need to have them in bidirectional links. It suffices that we have unidirectional links. So you only have 2 ports, 2 output ports to south and east, and on the other side you have the input port. So you reduce the number of ports per node. And the routing is simply XY routing, so very simple. And this sometimes you have to go around, but that's okay. This is how the router itself looks. So it's really simple. It's just for muxes and a buffer, and it's really fast. And so you don't have to need pipeline. But most of the current routers in NOCs are pipelined. They need 2 to 5 pipeline stages for routing the messages or the flits from one core to the other, and we just we only need 1 cycle. The most time you need is to go from one core to one core. So the distance of the cores is the limiting factor. So you have the connections to the few neighbors, and then you have local connections where you go to your NOC, to your local core, and there you need the send buffer and the receive buffer. And send buffer is a simple FIFO. The receive buffer you have to receive for every other core. You have to need an individual FIFO for every core, or you have to manage it somehow. So this is where we currently are working on, because this is very expensive. We have to figure out what we can do there. So what do we currently have? We have a cycle accurate simulator. It makes sense. It's not yet released, but it's on the way. I'm interested tomorrow what will be the best license for Wood as a software, but we also have hardware. We have an FPGA prototype, and therefore we don't know what should we do for a license, so maybe tomorrow I get some insights. This prototype, it's not completely correct. It's on Altera Cyclone, it's on Stratix, so it's a bigger one. I'm not sure, because I didn't make these numbers, it was a student, and I'm not sure where they come from, or if they are on the Stratix or on the Cyclone. I think it's on the Stratix, not on Cyclone, because, but we managed to get on the Stratix board 4 times 4 cores, each with 16 kilobytes. Okay, this is not much, but this is how many block RAM is on the chip. This is the only limiting factor. And we have our RISC-V implementation with this pipeline integrated messages, so they don't need a lot of logic, so this is more like most of the other implementations we saw here. The router is also very small with 500, but the problem is our interface with these buffers. This is a real problem, but I think this has to do with the student. He didn't know exactly, so we have to investigate what we should do there. And we have now another student who is working on it, so I think he will do it better. What are we currently doing? So we evaluate the performance and we want to identify our bottlenecks. So therefore we have to take applications ported to this architecture and look how do they work, where are the bottlenecks, and so we have to balance how many cores, how much bandwidth for the network, because the network is so simple we can just double it or 3 or 4 times. It's really so small. So maybe we have to definitely we have to balance it, and also how much memory do we need per core and so on. The other part is doing a timing analysis of the parallel applications. So we have to analyze the parallel applications. We have to separate them in parallel parts and sequential parts and do these things, and when we have this, or parallel to this, we want to optimize the architecture in terms of performance and in terms of worst case execution time, so or predictability. And also the power consumption is interesting, but yeah, it's a little bit more difficult because we only have an FPGA. We won't. ASIC is far away from. If somebody of you want to implement it in an ASIC, I'm open to it. So we also will release everything in open source. So the simulator will come in the next weeks, and for the NOC and the processor, it will take some time because you know, it's very bad, this this buffer thing. So when this is okay, then we will release it. So to sum up. This was all about timing analysis of parallel programs, and to show a different architecture which might be optimized, so that you have a better worst case execution time, and the approach that is different to these shared memory architectures that are currently all over the world is this reduced complexity many core, and the principle is we have many small cores with local private memory. They are connected by a predictable network on chip, and you don't have memory access between the cores, but you have this fine-grained message passing. Thank you. Do you have some questions? Yes?
Yeah.
Mike. There you go.
So this topic, it comes up again and again. This is not you're definitely not the first person to think that this is a good idea. In fact, both CERN and GSI have a similar homebrew project for hard real-time control. I was just wondering, have you looked at the
yes, we have a lot of this context, but most of these this real-time things, they don't publish how it's really working, and there are a lot of, they all have the label real-time, but it's not the real. So what we do here, static analysis, is for hard real-time. It's a different thing than just in the industry. Mostly you just measure the time, and if it's more or less thing, yeah. But for example, the P2020 or something like that, most of these interconnects, they say that it is, but they don't publish the details about the
I'm going to give you a contact with Matthias, who's the guy who built almost exactly the same thing at GSI, and actually he does measure the exact listening.
Yeah, there are some.
So I know that the way that my colleague Matthias built almost the same thing was, instead of adding 5 new instructions to the processor for communication, he still had an interconnect, but he then treated it like a slave device. So just when the processor wanted to send messages, it didn't need a new instruction, it just talked to a memory map slave. I was just wondering why modify the processor, basically?
Because you have a lot of overhead for the worst case execution. Then you always, whenever you have an interface, you always have to assume the worst case, and this is often a problem that these pessimism adds up for every step you take. And because this is directly in the pipeline, you can reduce it.
I have a quick question, sorry,
yeah.
kind of on the same topic, regarding kind of like hard real-time optimizations. Did you have any micro-architectural improvements? So I know in some ARM cores they'll do stuff like if an interrupt comes and it's in the middle of a bus fetch that's hanging for ages, you can kind of terminate that. You know, did you do any, or introduce any kind of like optimizations like that?
no, because we didn't care about this things that is to itself. So on the micro architecture itself.
This reminds me about something back around 1990. We used transputers.
Yeah.
I used them myself in a Nissan development, and I heard at lunchtime today that there's an open transputer activity, but maybe that's wrong. I don't know. But anyway, the transputer 25 years ago did exactly this.
Yeah,
4 serial links.
I'm aware of this. Yes.
Yeah, and they even sold these small modules with transputers on. So maybe you can look back and see if they did some other systems.
You know, it's a transputer. It's also the Chain machine. The Chain machine. It's 2 projects from the 80s, I think. So we are aware of them. The difference is they use parallel computers. So they were connected over a small, over a slow network. And now on a chip it's much faster. But we are aware of this, and this will influence what we do.
Any other question? Leslie, you had a follow-up, didn't you?
I did, but I don't want to go on.
Right, that's it. Well, thank you.